It was an ordinary afternoon in the neighborhood, with the warm sun casting long shadows over the quiet streets. The kind of day where nothing out of the ordinary happens, and everyone is just going about their business. Three friends, Jamal, Darnell, and Malik, were walking home from school. Their backpacks swung lazily over their shoulders, and their laughter filled the air as they joked around. They'd been best friends for as long as they could remember. Their bond was unbreakable, the kind of friendship that could only be formed after years of shared experiences, from little league games to school projects and everything in between. They were used to the simple things in life, playing basketball at the local court, helping their families around the house, and spending time with each other after school. Life had taught them to appreciate the small moments and the little joys. But today, something unusual was about to happen. As they walked down the familiar path leading to their street, they noticed a sleek, expensive car parked by the side of the road. It wasn't the kind of car you'd typically see in their neighborhood. It was a black luxury sedan, the kind you see in movies or on television shows where the rich and powerful drive around. The car had a flat tire, and it was obvious that the driver was having trouble. At first, they thought it was just another car that had broken down. Cars did that sometimes, and in their neighborhood, it was a common sight. But something caught their attention. The driver, a man in a well-fitted suit, was standing next to the car, looking frustrated. He was pacing around, seemingly unsure of what to do. The man was clearly out of place in the middle of their quiet street. He had an air of confidence, the kind of energy that made you think he was someone important. "Hey, looks like he could use some help," Malik said, nudging Jamal with his elbow. Malik was always the first to speak up when it came to helping others. He had that kind of personality that made people want to be around him. Jamal and Darnell exchanged looks. They weren't experts in changing tires, but they knew enough to offer a hand. "You think we can help him out?" Darnell asked. He had a way of looking at things from the next few weeks were a whirlwind. After Mr. Jameson had given them the green light, Jamal, Darnell, and Malik threw themselves into turning their business idea into a reality. It was no longer just a proposal, it was something they were actively working on, and that made it feel even more real. They were no longer the same three kids who had helped a stranger with a flat tire. They were budding entrepreneurs, working on a project that could make a real impact on their community. They spent countless hours after work, brainstorming, planning, and fine-tuning every detail. They were learning at an incredible pace, and even though it was challenging, they were excited by what they were accomplishing. The office where they worked during the day had become their second home. Every time they walked into that building, it felt like a place where they truly belonged, not just because of the work they were doing, but because of the people who believed in them. Each of them took on a different role in the project. Malik, with his natural flair for creativity, focused on how to market the platform. He researched online advertising strategies, how to build a social media presence, and ways to make their project stand out in a crowded market. He spent hours learning about branding, and before long, he was coming up with catchy slogans and ideas for promotional content. Darnell, with his organized mindset, took charge of the logistics. He set up meetings with local business owners, reached out to potential partners, and made sure everything was running smoothly. He was the one who kept track of deadlines and made sure they stayed on schedule. His attention to detail was invaluable, and as the project grew, he found himself developing new skills that he never imagined he would use. Jamal, always the problem solver, took on the technical side of things. He worked with the web developers to create the platform, ensuring it was user-friendly, functional, and visually appealing. It was a huge responsibility, but Jamal loved the challenge. He spent his nights learning coding and web design, and although there were times when things didn't go as planned, he always found a way to make it work. He was determined to make this project a success, no matter how tough it got. The trio was starting to make progress, but there were still plenty of obstacles along the way. They faced challenges with the platform's design, and there were moments when it seemed like they weren't going to be able to pull it off. At one point, the website crashed during testing, and they lost hours of work. Malik was frustrated, Darnell was stressed, and Jamal was ready to give up. But instead of letting the setback discourage them, they came together, came up with a plan, and started from scratch. They learned the importance of perseverance, of not giving up, even when things seemed impossible. Despite the setbacks, the boys were starting to see results. Local businesses were signing up to be part of their platform, and people in the community were starting to take notice. Their social media accounts were growing, and more people were getting excited about the idea of supporting local businesses. The excitement was contagious. The more progress they made, the more they realized that they were creating something important. This wasn't just a school project or an internship, it was a real business, and it was changing lives. One day, Mr. Jameson called them into his office again. The boys were nervous. They didn't know if they were about to get more feedback or if there was something wrong with their project. When they walked into his office, he was sitting behind his desk with a serious look on his face. For a moment, it seemed like he was about to tell them something bad. But then, he smiled. "You guys have done something incredible," Mr. Jameson said, leaning forward. "I've been following your progress, and I'm impressed with how far you've come. Not just with the business, but with the way you've all worked together. I'm proud of each of you." The boys sat in stunned silence. They had been nervous, thinking they were about to be criticized. But instead, Mr. Jameson was congratulating them. They couldn't believe it. After all the long hours, the struggles, and the hard work, they were finally hearing that it had all been worth it. "You've taken an idea and turned it into something that can actually make a difference," Mr. Jameson continued. "And that's not easy to do. You've shown creativity, teamwork, and determination. I knew you had potential, but you've exceeded my expectations." The praise was overwhelming, and the boys couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had come so far, and hearing that from Mr. Jameson made them realize just how much they had grown. They had started as 3 kids with a simple desire to help, and now, they were part of something much bigger. They had made it happen. But Mr. Jameson wasn't done yet. He had more news for them. "I think it's time for the next step," he said. "I'm going to help you take this project to the next level. We're going to officially launch it to the public. We'll hold an event, invite local businesses and media, and get the word out. This could be the start of something really big." The boys were stunned. A launch event? This was happening for real. It wasn't just some idea anymore, it was a legitimate business, and they were about to present it to the community. The pressure was on, but they were ready for the challenge. After all, they had already proven they could handle obstacles, and now they had to make the most of this opportunity. The days leading up to the launch event were filled with excitement and preparation. They worked tirelessly, making final adjustments to the platform, creating marketing materials, and organizing the event. It was a lot of work, but they were more determined than ever. They were going to make sure everything went smoothly. This was their moment to shine. Finally, the big day arrived. The event was held at a local community center, and it was packed. Business owners, local residents, and even a few reporters showed up to see what the boys had been working on. The boys were nervous, but when they stepped up to present their idea, they felt a sense of confidence. They had worked so hard for this moment, and now it was time to show everyone what they had accomplished. The presentation went off without a hitch. The crowd was impressed by the platform, and many of the local businesses signed up on the spot. The boys' hard work had paid off. They had created something that was not only successful but also impactful. It was the kind of project that could change the way people thought about supporting local businesses. As the event came to a close, Mr. Jameson pulled them aside. "You've done something amazing," he said, smiling. "I couldn't be more proud of you. This is just the beginning." The boys couldn't believe it. They had started from nothing, from a simple act of kindness on a street corner, and now they had created something real. They had learned valuable lessons, made new friends, and built a business that was making a difference. As they left the event, they looked at each other, feeling a sense of accomplishment they had never felt before. They knew this was only the start of a long journey, but they were ready for whatever came next. They had proven to themselves that anything was possible if they worked hard enough and believed in each other. They had come a long way from that day when they helped a stranger with a flat tire. And now, they were ready to take on the world. Ari Engel, and he was always the cautious one in the group. He didn't want to get involved in something that might cause trouble. Why not? We've changed tires before. How hard can it be? Jamal replied, his voice full of confidence. The next few days felt like a blur for Jamal, Darnell, and Malik. What had just happened? One moment, they were helping a man with a flat tire, and the next, they were being offered an internship with a billionaire businessman. They had all been going over the conversation in their heads, trying to make sense of it. The idea of working for someone like Mr. Jameson seemed surreal. It felt like a dream, like something. The next few weeks passed by quickly. Jamal, Darnell, and Malik had thrown themselves into their new roles with enthusiasm, even though they were still getting used to the idea of working in an office. Every morning, they met early to catch the bus to the city, and every evening, they returned home with new stories to tell. Their routine had shifted completely, and they were starting to feel more comfortable in the office environment, even though there was still so much to learn. At first, the work seemed basic. They ran errands, answered phones, and organized files, just like Mr. Jameson had said. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. They quickly realized that running a business wasn't all about big meetings and fancy presentations. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes work that kept everything running smoothly, and it was important. They weren't just fetching coffee or sorting paperwork. They were learning how to manage details, how to be organized, and how to communicate effectively. Jamal found himself working closely with the office manager, Mrs. Lawson, who taught him the ropes of organizing the office. She had a sharp eye for detail and was always on top of everything. At first, he felt like he was slow and making mistakes, but she was patient with him. She explained that no one was expected to know everything right away, and that it was okay to make mistakes as long as you learned from them. Darnell, on the other hand, was often tasked with answering phones and dealing with clients. At first, he was nervous about talking to people on the phone, especially when they sounded so professional and serious. But as the days went on, he grew more confident. He learned to answer questions, direct calls, and handle basic client requests. The more he practiced, the easier it became. Malik was often assigned to help with marketing tasks, such as organizing social media posts and preparing materials for upcoming events. He had always been interested in how businesses marketed themselves, so this was the part of the job that excited him the most. He quickly discovered how much effort went into every social media post, every flyer, every ad. It wasn't just about making something look good, it was about making sure it reached the right audience and communicated the right message. Despite the simple tasks at first, they all started to understand why they were doing this. It wasn't just busy work, it was training. They were learning how to handle different aspects of business and how to approach problems from different angles. It wasn't always easy, but each day, they felt like they were getting closer to something bigger. A few weeks into the internship, Mr. Jameson called them into his office for a meeting. The boys felt a mixture of excitement and nerves as they sat down in front of his desk. They had been working hard, and they hoped this meeting would be about more responsibilities, more chances to prove themselves. "Gentlemen," Mr. Jameson began, looking at each of them with a smile. "You've all been doing great work. I'm impressed with your efforts. You've shown dedication, and that's what counts most." The boys exchanged glances. It felt good to hear that they were being noticed. But they knew there was more to it than just compliments. "Today," Mr. Jameson continued, I want to talk about the next step. You've all done well with the tasks you've been given so far. Now, I'm going to give you a project. Something that will require all the skills you've been learning. The boys sat up straighter, their hearts beating a little faster. A project? That sounded like a real challenge. I want you three to work together on a proposal for a new business venture. It's a small-scale project, but it'll require research, planning, and collaboration. You'll have to come up with a business idea, a plan for how to execute it, and a strategy for marketing it. You'll present it to me in a week. The boys were stunned. A proposal? They hadn't expected something this big. They were still getting used to answering phones and organizing files, and now they were being asked to create a business plan? It was overwhelming, but also exciting. This was the kind of thing they had never imagined doing, and now they had the chance to try. Mr. Jameson must have seen the nervousness in their faces, because he quickly added, "Don't worry. I'll be here to guide you if you need help. I just want to see how you approach the task and how well you work together. This is your chance to show what you've learned." The boys nodded, even though they were still processing everything. This was their opportunity to prove themselves in a real way. They weren't just interns anymore, they were part of the team. Mr. Jameson believed in them, and now it was up to them to deliver. As they left his office, they couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was their chance to show what they were made of. The next few days were spent brainstorming ideas for their project. They met after work at Jamal's house, sitting around the kitchen table with notebooks, laptops, and pens scattered everywhere. They were determined to come up with something that would impress Mr. Jameson. The first challenge was deciding what kind of business idea to pursue. They threw around a lot of ideas, some silly, some more serious. At first, they considered starting a delivery service or a small app for local businesses, but nothing felt right. Then, as they discussed it more, Malik came up with an idea that seemed to resonate with everyone. "What if we started a community-based platform?" Malik suggested. "Something that connects local businesses with people who want to support them. We could offer promotions or discounts for people who shop locally, and we'd make it easier for customers to find small businesses they might not know about." Jamal and Darnell immediately liked the idea. It felt fresh, and it addressed a real need in their community. They started brainstorming ways to make it work, how they could design the platform, how they could market it, and how they could measure success. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was something they believed in. They wanted to give back to their community, and this project felt like a way to do that. As the days passed, they worked late into the night, refining their proposal. They researched similar businesses, figured out costs and potential revenue, and came up with a plan to present it to Mr. Jameson. They were nervous about presenting it, but they were proud of what they had created. It wasn't just a school project, it was a real business idea that could help their community. The day of the presentation finally came, and the boys walked into Mr. Jameson's office, ready to show him what they had worked on. They were a little nervous, but they knew this was their moment. Mr. Jameson listened carefully as they explained their idea, asking questions and offering suggestions. By the end of the presentation, he was nodding thoughtfully. "You've done a great job," he said with a smile. "This is exactly the kind of thinking I was hoping to see. You've shown creativity, teamwork, and dedication. I'm impressed." The boys couldn't believe it. Mr. Jameson liked their idea. It felt like everything they had worked for was finally paying off. "You've earned the next step," Mr. Jameson continued. "I'm going to help you turn this idea into a real project. We'll talk more about the next phase soon, but for now, you've proven that you have what it takes." The boys left his office feeling like they were on top of the world. They had done it. They had proven themselves. And now, they were one step closer to achieving so they would hear about but never experience. But this was real. Mr. Jameson had looked them in the eye, told them they had potential, and offered them an opportunity to step into a world they had never imagined. As they sat together at the local park later that afternoon, their usual hangout spot, the weight of Mr. Jameson's words still hung heavy in the air. "I just don't get it," Darnell said, shaking his head. "How could he pick us? We're just regular guys. What makes him think we have potential?" Malik, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "Maybe it's not about what we have now. Maybe it's about what he sees we can become." Jamal nodded. He had been thinking about that too. Mr. Jameson didn't see them as just three kids from the neighborhood. He saw something more, something they couldn't quite see in themselves yet. It was strange, but there was something about the way Mr. Jameson spoke that made Jamal feel like maybe they could do more with their lives. Maybe they could actually be something more than what everyone else expected of them. But still, the idea of walking into a big office and working in a corporate world felt like a huge leap. They had no experience, no connections, and no clue what it was like to work in business. They had never even been inside an office building, let alone worked in one. "Do you think we're ready for something like this?" Jamal asked. "What if we mess it up? What if we get there and just embarrass ourselves?" "I don't know," Darnell said, looking down at the ground. "But I do know that no one ever gets anywhere by staying in the same place. This could be a chance for us to actually make something of ourselves." They were all quiet for a moment, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Jamal could feel the tension building. He wanted to do something more with his life, but he wasn't sure if they were ready for what was ahead. Would they be out of their depth in a world that was so different from their own? Malik spoke up again, his voice a little more determined this time. "Look, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know what kind of work we'll be doing. But I do know this: we helped that man, and he saw something in us. He wouldn't have offered us this chance if he didn't think we could do it." "That's true," Jamal said slowly. "Maybe this is just one of those things where we have to take a leap and see where it goes." The decision wasn't easy, but after a lot of back and forth, the boys finally agreed that they would take the chance. They'd made up their minds. They would go to the city and meet Mr. Jameson, even if it felt like stepping into an unknown world. They were determined to at least try. The next day, they got ready to meet Mr. Jameson at his office. The idea of dressing up felt weird at first, but they understood that it was part of the world they were about to step into. They weren't used to wearing suits or fancy shoes, but they did their best. They met at Jamal's house early in the morning, all of them a little nervous but excited at the same time. As they made their way to the city, the trip felt like an adventure. They rode the bus, looking out the window at the city streets, which felt so different from their neighborhood. The buildings were taller, the cars were nicer, and the people looked like they belonged to a completely different world. It was intimidating. The boys were from a small town, where the biggest excitement came from school basketball games or local events. But this was the big city. Everything felt larger than life. When they finally arrived at Mr. Jameson's office building, they couldn't help but stare up at the towering glass structure. It looked so professional, so clean. There were people in suits walking in and out of the doors, and the whole place had an air of importance about it. They felt out of place, like they didn't belong here. But Mr. Jameson had invited them, and they had made a promise to themselves that they would go through with it. Inside the building, the lobby was even more impressive. There were marble floors, sleek metal elevators, and a receptionist sitting at a desk, greeting everyone who walked in. It felt like they had stepped into a completely different world. The boys couldn't help but feel a little nervous as they walked up to the front desk. "We're here to see Mr. Jameson," Jamal said, his voice a little shaky. The receptionist smiled politely and picked up the phone. "I'll let him know you're here." Within minutes, they were led into an elevator and taken up to the top floor. The office was even more impressive than they had imagined. The walls were lined with large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Mr. Jameson was waiting for them when they entered, and he greeted them warmly. "Gentlemen, welcome," he said, standing up and shaking their hands. I'm glad you could make it. Please, take a seat. They sat down, still taking everything in. Mr. Jameson made them feel at ease, explaining that their first task would be learning the basics of the business world. He wasn't going to throw them into anything too complicated right away. Instead, he wanted them to start small and build their knowledge from there. They would learn about finance, marketing, and management, things they had never even considered before. You'll start with simple tasks, Mr. Jameson explained. Answering phones, organizing files, running errands. But as you learn, you'll take on more responsibility. I want to see you grow. The boys exchanged glances, their nerves slowly starting to settle. They had agreed to take the leap, but now that they were here, it felt real. This wasn't just some idea in their heads anymore. They were actually going to do it. We're ready, Malik said, his voice firm. We'll work hard. We want to learn. Mr. Jameson smiled, clearly pleased with their response. I'm confident you'll do well. Let's get started, shall we? And just like that, their journey into a new world began. The boys were no longer just three kids from the neighborhood. They were about to step into the world of business, where hard work and determination could change everything. The next morning, Jamal, Darnell, and Malik were sitting in their usual spot in the living room, flipping through old video games and talking about what they wanted to do for the weekend. The events of the previous day, the flat tire, meeting Mr. Jameson, still felt surreal. It was the kind of thing that felt like it belonged in a movie, not in their small neighborhood. They had all been talking about how unexpected the encounter was. They'd helped a man with a flat tire. No big deal, right? But something about that situation kept tugging at their minds. The way Mr. Jameson had been so calm and appreciative, the way he'd mentioned that he owed them one, there was something special about it. Even though they'd turned down his offer for money, the encounter felt meaningful. It wasn't just about fixing a tire, it felt like they had done something more. I still can't believe we met him, Malik said, taking a sip of his soda. A billionaire. And we just helped him with a tire like it was no big deal. I know, right? Jamal replied. I mean, we've helped people before, but that guy? He could have called someone to come get it fixed, but he didn't. He actually let us help. Darnell, the more cautious one of the group, nodded slowly. Yeah, but I wonder why he was so calm about it. You know, for a billionaire, he didn't act all high and mighty. Just regular. I think that's what I liked about him, Malik said. He didn't try to act like he was too important. It was like he was just another guy who needed help. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation settling in. Just then, the sound of a car pulling up outside interrupted their thoughts. The boys looked out the window, expecting to see one of their neighbors or maybe a delivery truck. But what they saw made them freeze. A sleek, black SUV was parked right in front of their house. That's not any regular car, Jamal said, squinting through the window. Is that Mr. Jameson's car? Darnell and Malik rushed to the window, peering out as well. Sure enough, it was the same SUV that Mr. Jameson had been driving the day before. The sight of it made their hearts race. What could he want? They hadn't expected to see him again, especially not so soon. Maybe he needs help with something else, Malik said, although there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. You think he's come back for more help with his car? Before they could finish the thought, the car door opened, and out stepped Mr. Jameson, dressed in another sharp suit. He looked even more polished than the day before, with his tie perfectly knotted and his shoes shining brightly in the sunlight. But this time, instead of walking straight to the front door, he seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if deciding how to approach the house. The boys were still trying to figure out why he was here when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Jamal said, his voice shaky. He was the first to head toward the door, trying to keep his cool. But his heart was pounding in his chest. Mr. Jameson had already made an impression on him yesterday, and now here he was again. What was going on? When Jamal opened the door, Mr. Jameson was standing there, smiling warmly, just like the day before. "Good morning, gentlemen," Mr. Jameson greeted them, his voice full of energy. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." No, not at all," Jamal stammered, trying to hide his surprise. "What brings you by?" Mr. Jameson's smile grew wider as he stepped inside, his presence filling the room. "I know this might sound strange, but I wanted to thank you again for what you did yesterday. Not just for helping me with the tire, but for doing it with such kindness. You guys showed a lot of character. I respect that." The boys exchanged glances, still trying to process what was happening. Darnell was the first to speak up, his voice a bit more cautious. "You're welcome, Mr. Jameson. We didn't do it for anything in return," he said, not sure where this conversation was going. "I know you didn't," Mr. Jameson replied, his tone sincere. "But sometimes, when someone does something good, it should be recognized. I'm here to do just that." Jamal, still unsure, looked at Mr. Jameson. "What do you mean?" "Well," Mr. Jameson began, adjusting his cufflinks, "I run a few businesses in the city. And I'm always looking for young people with potential. People who are willing to work hard and learn. You three have something about you. Something I don't see often." The boys were taken aback. What was he talking about? They had never thought of themselves as special. They were just regular kids from a regular neighborhood. They were used to helping out where they could, but they never thought it would lead to something like this. "You guys ever thought about doing something bigger?" Mr. Jameson asked, raising an eyebrow. "Something more than just school or hanging out with friends?" The question hung in the air for a moment. The boys didn't know how to answer. They'd never really thought beyond their neighborhood, beyond the school and the basketball court. What else was there? "I'm offering you an opportunity," Mr. Jameson continued. "A chance to come work with me. Intern at one of my companies, learn about business, and get a real shot at making something of yourselves." The offer was so sudden, so unexpected, that the boys didn't know how to respond at first. Darnell spoke up, his voice filled with skepticism. "You want us to work for you? But, we don't know anything about business. We're just kids." Mr. Jameson smiled again, this time with more warmth than before. "That's the thing. You don't have to know everything. I'll teach you. I've been in your shoes before, believe me. I started out with nothing. But I had a strong work ethic and a desire to learn. And that's what you have, too. You just need the right guidance." The boys stood there in stunned silence. It was hard to believe what they were hearing. An internship? A chance to work with a billionaire? It all felt like something out of a dream. They had never imagined that helping a stranger with a flat tire would lead to something like this. Mr. Jameson gave them a moment to process what he was saying before he added, "I'm serious. I'll arrange everything. You'll learn about business, finance, and all the skills you need to succeed. You can take it as far as you want. The choice is yours." Finally, Malik broke the silence. Are you sure about this? I mean, we're just regular kids. We've never done anything like this before." Mr. Jameson nodded. "That's exactly why I'm offering it to you. You've got potential. I want to help you realize it. But you have to be willing to work hard and take it seriously." The boys looked at each other, their minds racing. This was the kind of opportunity that most people only dreamed of. But could they really take it? Was it too big for them? Before they could answer, Mr. Jameson smiled again and said, "Think it over. I'll give you some time. But I believe in you, and I think this could be the start of something great." With that, he turned and walked out of the house, leaving the boys standing in the doorway, stunned by the unexpected turn their lives had just taken. Without another word, the three of them approached the car. As they got closer, the man stopped pacing and turned to face them. He looked them up and down, his expression shifting from frustration to surprise. For a moment, it seemed like he wasn't sure how to react to the three teenagers standing in front of him. "You guys know how to fix a flat?" the man asked, his voice smooth but with a hint of doubt. "We can give it a try," Malik replied with a grin, always the optimist. The man studied them for a moment before giving a small nod. "I appreciate the offer. I'm not sure what I'd do without help." They could tell that he wasn't used to asking for help, but they were happy to lend a hand. The boys had seen plenty of flat tires around town and knew the basics of how to handle them. They might not have been professionals, but they had a lot of common sense and a desire to get things done. Jamal knelt down to look at the tire, checking it out for a moment. "It doesn't look too bad. Let's just get the spare and get started." As Jamal began to open the trunk, Darnell and Malik watched as the man leaned against the car, his arms crossed. The boys were quiet for a moment, focusing on the task ahead. It wasn't long before they realized they weren't just helping a stranger on the side of the road. They were helping someone who, judging by the car and his expensive suit, was probably very wealthy. That thought made Jamal feel a bit out of place, but he quickly shook it off. They were just doing the right thing. The man seemed to sense their hesitation and offered a smile. "I'm Mr. Jameson, by the way. Don't worry, I'm not looking for anything fancy. Just need to get this tire changed. I'll be on my way once it's fixed." "We got you, Mr. Jameson," Malik said, flashing a smile. "We'll take care of it." Together, the boys worked to jack up the car and remove the flat tire. They had never done this with such a fancy car before, and they had to be extra careful. There was a lot of laughing, and every now and then, a joke was cracked to lighten the mood. The tension from the man's initial frustration slowly melted away as he watched the boys work. They might not have been perfect, but they were determined to get it done. After a few minutes of trial and error, the tire was changed. The boys stepped back, wiped their hands on their pants, and looked at their work. The car was as good as new, and they were proud of what they had accomplished. "Thanks a lot, guys," Mr. Jameson said, clearly relieved. "I didn't think I'd be able to get this done on my own. You really helped me out." "It was no problem," Darnell said, smiling. "Glad we could help." Jamal stepped forward, his hands on his hips. "Glad you didn't have to call for a tow truck or something. That would have cost a lot." Mr. Jameson chuckled, the sound of it warm and genuine. "You're right about that. I owe you guys one." The boys stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. They had helped him out, and now it was time to part ways. But before they could say goodbye, Mr. Jameson reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills. "Here, take this for your trouble," he said, offering them the money. "It's the least I can do." But the boys didn't want his money. They weren't looking for anything in return. Jamal shook his head. "We didn't do it for the money, Mr. Jameson. Just happy to help out." For a moment, Mr. Jameson seemed taken aback. He hadn't expected that response. In his world, people didn't usually turn down money, especially when it was offered so freely. But there was something about these boys, something genuine. He could see it in the way they helped him without expecting anything in return. "Well, I admire that," he said with a smile. "Most people wouldn't turn down a bit of cash. You guys are different. And that's a good thing." With that, he thanked them one last time, shook their hands, and got into his car. The engine hummed to life, and as the boys watched him drive off, they couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. They had done something good, something that might not have seemed like much at the time, but it felt important. Little did they know, this simple act of kindness would change the course of their lives in ways they could never have imagined.